out, see more pictures, see the gallery, or just sort of get more granular, hit the link down below to go to the full written review and check that out as well. Let's go ahead and jump into the review. So 2014, Apple's mantra seems to be thin, thin, and thinner. The original iPad Air was already pretty svelte. This guy, though, gets even thinner. It's 6.1 millimeters, which if you can do quick math, is 18% less than the original iPad Air, 7.5 millimeters. The cool thing, though, it feels just as sturdy while weighing under a pound. And no, I'm not going to see if I can bend it. It feels pretty stable, secure, despite that really diminutive profile. Design-wise, though, it's still really close to the last gen and pretty much every iPad for the past few years, save for the gold color and that little gold ring around the home button, which is hiding Touch ID. As thin usually tends to do, though, it does come with a bit of a cost. The battery has dropped a bit from 32.4 watt hours to 27.3 watt hours. One of the big omissions for me, though, with this tablet is, and it seems kind of strange, is the removal of the profile switch on the side, or the mute switch, however you wanted to use it. Simple thing, it just became very annoying. Now if you want to put the volume all the way down, you got to sort of hit the button and hold it all the way down, or just call up Control Center. Not a giant deal by any stretch of the imagination, but just annoying to have it not here. In its place now, you've got a mic, which means there's no break on the back of the cellular model for a mic hole. If that's a big issue for you, then hey, no break there. It's a tiny aesthetic improvement that went sort of for really big hardware change. That one I had a hard time understanding. As I mentioned earlier, Touch ID is here, and it works just as well on the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, but it's only for in-app purchases. It's a nice and very obvious addition. If you had issues with Touch ID on the iPhone 5S and you're worried about how it might perform here, don't worry. It works really well. I had some accuracy issues with the 5S, but on the 6, 6 Plus, and now the iPad line, I'm batting almost 1,000 with Touch ID working. Processor-wise, this thing's gotten a lot faster. It's clocked up at 1.5 gigahertz versus 1.4 from the last gen. L2 cache has doubled from 1 to 2 megabytes. RAM has also doubled now with 2 gigabytes on board here. Apple's also claiming a 40% boost in CPU performance and improved graphic prowess, which you'd expect from a new processor. Because I like to see what scores are, I ran this through the Geekbench 3 multi-core test, and the score came back at 4,489, which is up from about 2,700 on the first gen, so big improvement there. So obviously, yeah, this thing is really fast. Games and apps not only open very quickly, their performance is now superb. And right now, though, the big caveat here is developers haven't had much time to code for the new hardware. I'd wager that we start to see a big difference once all the RAM starts getting used, which does have me a bit worried about how older models might perform. For right now, though, not going to see a giant difference. But, you know, 6 to 8 months down the road, you might really start to see that discrepancy between the past gen and the current gen. So I wanted to test some games, so I asked the office what I should play, and Brighton said I should play a quiet little game called Five Nights at Freddy's while doing my test, and I did. But I also nearly peed myself, so if you haven't tried that game, don't try it alone. It is super scary. You get these animatronic guys that are coming out and trying to kill you. But I probably shouldn't embarrass myself publicly, but it's true. And while I was getting scared out of my big boy pants, everything did perform really, really well. Graphics looked great, the sound was awesome, everything just worked as you'd expect. Another nice addition here in the iPad Air 2 is also 802.11 AC, so faster Wi-Fi for you Wi-Fi loving folks. We talked a lot about hardware, but this is a tablet, and you're pretty much staring at this thing the whole time. That's the display. Looking at the spec sheet, you might not think much has changed. You got the same 2048 by 1536 resolution. No Retina HD here at all. But Apple was still able to slim down the display by using a laminated, optically bonded, no-gap display, which is similar to the ones we have in the iPhone. So that's just fancy talk. What does it do? It saves space, for sure, but also is now way less reflective. You don't notice it much indoors, but outdoors, it is a ridiculous difference. I almost said redonkulous, but I'm not going to make up words. It's a big difference. I can now read my Marvel Civil War books without having to turn the brightness all the way up when I'm outside and sort of contorting the screen to avoid the sun. You can use this outside now, which is a giant plus. Also, though, something about the color seems a little bit off to me. There's kind of a little hint of a pink hue. Obviously, no pixels can be seen here. Text looks awesome. Movies and games all look really, really good as you'd expect. So one thing I usually don't talk about in tablets, because I never saw much use about it, is the cameras. But I'd be remiss to not talk about it here on the iPad Air 2. If you want to see sample galleries and stuff, again, hit the link down below, go to the review. We have a ton of pictures up there. So now it's got an 8 megapixel sensor. It actually takes decent pics. It has some iPhone-like tricks like burst mode, slow-mo, and time-lapse. I'm obviously not a giant fan of using this thing as just a huge viewfinder. But if you like that, you know, you might want to give it a shot. I usually loathe taking pictures of the tablet, but you know, if that's your cup of tea, this is pretty good. So the big kind of elephant in the room, monkey in the room, elephant-monkey hybrid in the room is battery. And it's probably the big reason we don't have a Retina HD display here. So as I mentioned, the batteries dropped from 32 watt hours to 27.3 watt hours, but Apple still promises the same 10 hours of battery life. Evidently, the A8X is a little bit more power efficient, in case you're wondering how they pulled off that voodoo. On one hand, Apple was right. We got about 10.5 hours on 50% brightness with Wi-Fi off while just HD videos played, so we actually surpassed Apple's mark. On the other hand, we ran the same test on the iPad Air 1 and got about an hour more. So it's not as bad as I originally thought it would be on battery life, but it's not a giant improvement either. But I guess holding par is a nice addition when you're looking at a tablet that's this thin. So what's the conclusion on the iPad Air 2? Not surprisingly, it's the best iPad Apple's ever made, as kind of you'd expect. Some nice new features here. Touch ID in particular is really nice to have. In all honesty, when I was using this thing, it felt like I was just holding a screen, which I guess is what the iPad was always meant to feel like. I definitely would have traded a few millimeters though to get better battery life, but as is the trend nowadays, thin is in. Higher res screen would have definitely made this feel more feature-proof as well, but something's got to be saved, I guess, for the iPad Air 3. iOS 8.1 works as you'd expect. We've covered that sort of ad nauseum. If you have the first generation iPad Air, I'd probably think twice before upgrading. If you have anything older than that though, this is a great tablet and a worthwhile upgrade. The iPad line used to be the king of the tablet world. Back when all Android had it was the Zoom, but as they tend to do, times have changed. Now the iPad is just one of many very, very good tablets out there. It gets a very solid 8.5 on the Techno Buffalo scale. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. We are people just like you who love technology. If you want to keep up on the latest in the world of consumer electronics, hit the big subscription button right down below. If you want to see us play games, although admittedly sometimes very poorly, check out our Twitch channel at twitch.tv/technobuffalo.